So today I've got a presentation for you of radio broadcasting with a local personality. Are you ready? So today I'm here at BasinMedia Active to interview Jay Davis. Now Jay is a local personality to me here in Klamath Falls, but he's got some ties down to Las Vegas, Nevada. Big market to small market. He's been around. Let him tell you his story of how he went from student to master. Okay, Jay, start by telling me your background, where you started in high school all the way up to where you are now.
Okay, well, it started way before high school. It started when I was a kid, listening to Wolfman Jack. I mean, I was like, man, I want to be that guy. I want to do what he does. I want to talk to people. You know, I don't care if they, like what I'm saying or not. I just want to talk to people. And I would talk to everybody, man. I'd sit down and entertain my family and tell them stories, and it was cool. And they didn't mean nothing. The stories had no meaning whatsoever, but it was me, and I was getting to tell a story. Kind of like what I do now. It doesn't really mean anything, but I get to tell a story every day. So when I was in high school, I started hanging out at radio stations in Vegas, and I'd get them coffee. I'd just pull paperwork, whatever. They had the thing called carts, which is like an 8-track tape. Somebody might remember what one of those looks like. And all the commercials were on these carts, so I'd run and grab those for the guys, whatever it took, whatever they needed me to do, pull records, whatever. And after a while, the general manager, her name was Nancy Reynolds, I remember her really well. She said, you know what, you never shut up, so I think I'm going to go ahead and, figure out how to get you on the radio. So they started me part-time, working weekends on KOMP, 92.3, the rock station in Las Vegas. It was what I always wanted to do, and there I was on the radio, and it was terrible. it was not good at all. It took a while, but I stuck with it, and that's really what I've always told my kids and everything else. Just stay with what you do. So here I am, 33 years later. Hard to believe, but yeah, 33 years still doing this stuff, and I love doing it. And the great thing about now is, I get to talk to kids all the time and tell them how cool it is, to do something you really love doing. I don't ever feel like I'm coming to work. I have a great time every single day, and I still get to tell stories. I still get to tell people, either if it's the weather changing or if it's, just something that happened to me. I tell way too much about myself, but I think that's part of, what makes it work for so long, is that people, they like to hear that. But I didn't go to school, get some broadcasting degree, none of that stuff. But, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But if you're doing that, you should already know that that's what you want to do. Because this is not one of those careers where you're going to make a ton of money, but you really have to love it. You'll be okay. You can survive and, pay your bills and all that, buy a car, that kind of stuff. But you're not going to make a ton of money. You're not going to make millions unless you end up, in a major market somewhere. I never wanted to do that. I just wanted to tell my story.
So you said you don't have a formal education. I think one time I heard you say you have like some kind of degree or something in electronics
engineering. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's got to be 17 years now, maybe more. Our engineer in Vegas was in a helicopter crash on a mountaintop. And he didn't die, luckily. He was okay, but he couldn't come back to work. And for a long time, we just didn't have anybody that was any good working on our stuff. So stuff was really getting into disrepair, especially the equipment we'd use for remotes. It just wasn't working. So the general manager, because I was complaining, I was a program director of one of our stations, and I kept complaining that the equipment was just not up to snuff. He said, why don't you do it? And I laughed. And that was the end of that meeting. But he kept saying it and kept saying it. I'm like, look, I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't know how to fix equipment. What do you mean? He's like, no, I'll send you to school. Okay. Well, my son had just been born 2 years earlier. So I thought to myself, well, I could be a gypsy and keep doing what I'm doing, or somehow I can work it in so I can do both. Still do what I love, but, go to school and get this degree. And I did for a while. For a couple of years, I did both. And then I got my degree, and they wanted me to just be their engineer, so I did that. And I stayed doing that for 14 years.
So you were roughly 30 at the time you went back to school to do that?
I was 34 34.
34.
It was in 98.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 34 years old.
And was that through like a local community college, or was it like for a UNLV, or?
I almost hate to say it, it was ITT Tech.
Okay.
Because everybody's saying, "Oh, ITT is a terrible place," but they taught me a lot. It was a good engineering school in Las Vegas at the time, and there are better choices out there. I mean, right here you got Oregon Tech. Mm-hmm. So for electronics technicians, boy, we got a great school here.
Yeah,
you can't beat it. But yeah, I went and got a Associates of Science degree in electronics engineering, and I'm real proud of that. I ended up graduating with a 4.0. My dad passed away right after that happened, right after I graduated. And I think it was the only time. And he always loved what I did because he got to listen to me on the radio. So I thought, this is great. That's my kid. I get to listen to him. But when I got the degree, that was something.
Yeah.
And then he passed away right after that, but he got to see that happen. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah, I did that for a while. But then a couple years ago, my son's grown. He's done with school and all that stuff. And I thought, you know what? I like being the engineer, but I don't love being the engineer. I love being on the radio talking to people, and I got to figure out a way to get back into that. I was in Chico, California, and I applied here at the rock station back in, I think it was June of 2012, and I almost got here, but they promoted from within, and that's great. Fantastic. That happened. And I didn't think I'd ever hear back. And that's the end of that. No big deal. And then I got a call in October of 2013 from the boss here who said, "Are you still interested?" I'm like, "Sure." He says, I think I could use you on my country station. And it stopped me dead in my tracks because this is my first country station. I've never been on a country station before. I didn't know what I was doing. He said, "No, I just love the way you sound. I think your delivery's good, and you're real down to earth. You tell stories." I had been working part-time on the classic rock station. Well, it was full-time, but I only used a little bit of time to do it, and I would still engineer at the classic rock station down in Chico. So that's what I had sent him, was the stuff that I did there. Excuse me. And he said, "No, I think you'd work out really well here. You'd fit right in." So I came up, we interviewed. I loved the market, when I first came, and the building here is incredible, these studios, real nice. So I said, well, okay, we'll give it a shot. It almost didn't happen because there was, it's always a negotiation. Things you think, well, I don't know if I can do that because, honestly, it's a smaller market. But in the end, I said to myself, and I talked to my wife, because you got to do that. If you're married or in a relationship, you got to bring them in on it. Mm-hmm. You don't just say, "We're moving." That doesn't work.
Right.
So I talked to my wife, and I said, here's the situation. And she knew that I was kind of miserable. That not being able to find the right situation, and I felt like I'd found it. And I told her, I said, it's going to be a pay cut. I'm going to take a $10,000 a year plus pay cut right off the bat. But I think I can get it back. So she said, I'm down. She said, if you're not going to be miserable anymore, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go and, let's everybody be happy. So I came here, and I've almost made all of that back up, which is awesome. But the simple fact was sometimes, and I never felt this before, it's okay to not make as much money. As long as okay, I can pay my bills. That's fine. I can pay my car payment. I can eat. It's all good.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not miserable, everybody around me is going to be a lot happier.
Right.
So I came and I did it. And here I am 3.5 years later, still digging it.
So if you could talk to Jay of 15 years old, knowing where you are today, what would you, I guess, recommend to him, or what would you change to try and maybe better your situation, or is there anything you would change?
I don't know. Maybe I would tell 15-year-old Jay, don't party as much. Because I spent a lot of time in my 20s and 30s just partying. And it was fun. I still had the job. I was still doing the job, but I spent all that time just partying, man.
Yeah.
Maybe not do that as much. But at the same time, I look back and I go, man, that was a fun time. It wasn't terrible in the 80s and 90s, but probably would have been better off still financially if I hadn't, because I blew a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
But it was fun. But no, you know what I would say, for two things. First of all, I'd probably tell myself, get a better education, right off the bat. Learn more about the technical sides of what we do. Because there are things, you got to learn how to run this equipment. You got to know how to do this stuff. It took me a while to get that part down. And, how to make things sound good. Because now what I do here is I make commercials for the radio station. So you got to know how to mix things together and make them sound good. And probably, a little more actual education in that area, as opposed to nothing wrong with it because this is the way I did it. Just learn as you go. Sometimes that's the way it goes. But, man, I would have been probably way ahead of myself if I'd have done get an education.
So is that the same advice if you had a high school student today that came and said, I want to be just like you, would you give that same advice to them?
Absolutely.
Get an education?
Here's two things. First of all, get an education in school. Learn how to write, because writing is a big part of this. But then, do what I did. Hang out at a radio station and, intern, whatever you can do to learn what happens inside the building. So you got those two pieces of it going all together at the same time. Don't just lean on one. That's what I did. I just did the one thing. I just learned as I went, which is fine. But if I'd had the technical education in advance of that, or, some writing skills and things like that, I probably would have been a lot further along when I finally became a full-time radio guy, which was in 1986, 2 years after I actually got my first part-time job.
Okay.
So, yeah, absolutely, education.
Okay.
It's key.
So where do you think what would you call yourself, a radio broadcaster?
I'm a broadcaster.
Okay, so where would you think the broadcasting industry is going for the next 20 years?
Well, in the last 20 years, we've been doomed. Everybody has said radio is dead, radio is dead, radio is dead. It's not. There's a couple of things that we offer that your satellite, your podcasts, your Pandoras, those things can't give you what's going on in my town. They just can't. They can throw in little recorded snips from other places or from national, but what's going on in my town? What's my weather? What's the events that are coming up? If it wasn't for broadcast radio, how hard would it be to tell people about our events, a benefit for the Basin event? How hard would it be to tell people about that without the power of broadcast? We reach a lot of people without a whole lot of effort, honestly. You don't have to sit home and turn on your television. You're driving, you're at work, wherever you are, we're with you. And I think that's where we continue. The future of this business is in localized content. At the same time, I think there's still a place, and there will always be a place in broadcast radio for playing your favorite songs. Sorry.
Okay. So last question. Outside of the education piece, you had mentioned writing, hanging out and stuff. What skill set or what skills could somebody practice that's not in school that maybe they can use somewhere else? Is it? I always say presentation skills because that's something I always think of.
Yeah, presentation skills are important.
The ability to sit down and talk to an audience without stuttering and stumbling through yourself. Is this something somebody can practice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the best ways to start doing that is with yourself. I know this sounds weird, but yourself in a mirror. If you can look at yourself straight in a mirror and have a conversation about something without laughing, once you get to that point, then it's a lot easier to do it in front of people. And then once you've done that, get in front of, sit your family down, 4 or 5 people, and, talk to them. Or if you want to tell jokes, whatever it is, and you get comfortable with that, then expand on that. Go, do that with your friends at lunch or whatever at school. If you're, sitting at the lunch table at school and you got 10 friends there, just start cracking jokes or, just talking to them. At a point, it just becomes a conversation. It's not a presentation, even though you do need to know how to do that. That's not what it is. It's just a conversation. And that's what I tell everybody who comes in, and you can hear it sometimes. You can hear the difference between someone who's having a conversation and someone who's talking at you. You don't want to do that. You want to be just like if you and I, like we are now, just sitting here chatting. That's what you want it to always be.
Right, just a conversation. Okay.
Yeah, it's a one-on-one deal. When I'm talking, when I crack this mic open and I start talking, I'm talking to one person. I'm never talking to there's the whole town. No, it's one person.
Right.
Because maybe, if you think about it, there's only one guy listening. That's at a certain point. You never know who's listening. So you save it for that one person. make sure that, and if you want to hang a picture of a person in front of you, however you want to make that happen for yourself, however that works for you, then that's what you have to do. Okay. But it's just a one-on-one deal.
Any final thoughts outside of that?
If you don't love it, I mean, really, it's in your blood, don't do it, because it'll drive you crazy. But if you do love it and you're doing it, you'll never, ever want to do anything else. So, there's that.
All right, gang, so that was Jay Davis. He's the program and production manager for KLAD and BasinMedia Active here in Klamath Falls. Now, if you'd like to tell your story, I can still do it by phone, messenger, Skype, or in person if we're close enough. So that was how Jay became a master from a student. We'll see you next time.